A new motion was recently unsealed in the January 6th case against Donald Trump, and it is damning. There is bombshell after bombshell after bombshell. So if you get anything out of this video, please do subscribe, as I am trying to make it to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year and would very much appreciate your support. Now, we already knew that the January 6th committee was able to do a lot of great work surrounding January 6th and what led up to it, but there were still many bits and pieces of information that we just did not know. But this unsealed document goes a long way in filling in some of those details. So it was quite satisfying to see that even when Fox News broke this story, they said that Donald Trump resorted to crimes. So let's go ahead and take a look at that really fast, and then we will dig into this a little further.
On a busy news day, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. Prosecutors right now are offering a redacted version of special counsel Jack Smith's filing. That had to be made public today. It was in this newly unsealed court paper. We're learning that former President Trump resorted to crimes in a bid to cling to power after the 2020 election.
Donald Trump resorted to crimes in a bid to cling on to power after the 2020 election. I think that is pretty damning. Now, let's not forget how we got here. Donald Trump tried to argue that he was somehow immune from prosecution for these crimes. He argued that all the way up to the Supreme Court, which is where we got that insane immunity ruling, where the Supreme Court said that all core functions of a president was 100% immune. They also said that any official acts would be presumptively immune. And then they granted no immunity for unofficial acts. So now Jack Smith has to prove that Donald Trump was working in his personal capacity when he was committing these crimes to subvert the will of the people after the 2020 election. So let's go ahead and look at how he opens up this argument in this new unsealed document.
In light of the Supreme Court's immunity decision, which divides official acts from private acts, giving presidents immunity for official ones, it reads in part, quote, "The defendant asserts that he is immune from prosecution for his criminal scheme to overturn the 2020 presidential election because, he claims, it entailed official conduct. Not so. Although the defendant was the incumbent president during the charged conspiracies, his scheme was fundamentally a private one. This motion provides a comprehensive account of the defendant's private criminal conduct."
A comprehensive account of the defendant's private criminal conduct. And that is exactly what this motion sets out to do. It provides a whole bunch of facts that I don't think the public has ever seen before. We already knew that Donald Trump did things like call Brad Raffensperger and say, "Find me 11,780 votes." We already knew that he was sowing doubt in our election systems months before the election. But there are still key pieces of information that up until now we really didn't know. Like, what was Trump actually thinking as he was doing all this? Was there any intent for him to blatantly break the law? So it was really funny to see that we have something that looks like intent in this new motion. Let's go ahead and take a look at that.
And among the new allegations is that Trump told his wife Melania, his daughter Ivanka, and his son-in-law Jared Kushner, quote, "It doesn't matter if you won or lost the election, you still have to fight like hell."
So I think this goes to show that Donald Trump did not care if he won or if he lost. He was intending on staying in power no matter what. And they did this by deploying a bunch of different mechanisms to try to keep him in power. One of which was them trying to sow chaos right after the election. So let's go ahead and look at exactly how they did that in the Trump campaign.
In the immediate post-election period, while Trump claimed fraud without proof, his private operatives sought to create chaos rather than seek clarity at polling places where states were continuing to tabulate votes. For example, on November 4th, someone identified as Person 5, a campaign employee, agent, and co-conspirator of the defendant, tried to sow confusion when the ongoing vote count at the TCF Center in Detroit, Michigan, looked unfavorable to Trump. There, when a colleague at the TCF Center told Person 5, "We think a batch of votes heavily in Biden's favor is right," Person 5 responded, "Find a reason it isn't. Give me options to file litigation."
Think about how insane this is. They are finding out that things are looking good for Biden in Detroit, and they're saying, give me a reason, go find me a reason, make up a reason to file litigation. This is a deliberate effort to sow chaos in the vote counting process. Absolutely insane. But let's go ahead and keep on going.
The colleague suggested there was about to be unrest reminiscent of the Brooks Brothers riot, a violent effort to stop the vote count in Florida after the 2000 presidential election. Person 5 responded, "Make them riot and do it."
Make them riot and do it. This is insane. We now know that the Trump campaign was more than willing to deploy violence to try to keep Trump in power. That should be disqualifying for anybody. And that's exactly what they got. They got the violence that they wanted. I mean, we just can't forget, right?
Multiple capital injuries! Multiple capital injuries!
Most Americans looked on that day in horror. More than 100 police officers were injured that day, some of which later died. But Donald Trump did not care. This is what he wanted. We even have people in his Trump campaign saying, "Make them riot." And even after the violence broke out, and Donald Trump found out that Mike Pence's safety was in jeopardy, what do you think Trump said? Let's go ahead and take a look at that.
Smith's new filing also provides some insight to what was going through Trump's head when he learned his running mate was in danger. Upon receiving a phone call alerting him that Pence had been taken to a secure location, someone identified as Person 15 rushed to the dining room to inform Trump in hopes that Trump would take action to ensure Pence's safety. Instead, after Person 15 delivered the news, Trump looked at him and said only, "So what?"
So what? About your own vice president? Donald Trump did not care if Mike Pence was in danger. Donald Trump didn't care that his mob of violent supporters were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." This is what Trump wanted. He took the actions necessary to rile up a violent mob on January 6th because they wanted to stop the certification of the 2020 election. And that was after Trump assembled fake electors in key battleground states and sent fake documents to get Mike Pence to certify those fake documents. And when none of that worked, Donald Trump deployed violence because he didn't want to leave the office, because he wanted to stay in power. And this motion goes to show that there was clear intent on Trump's part to break these laws, and furthermore, he was doing it in a private capacity. That's the most important part. And so how is Donald Trump responding to all of this? Well, I'm sure you guys could probably guess, but let's go ahead and see what he said.
So here's what he says. He wrote this on Truth Social. He says, the release of this falsehood-ridden, unconstitutional January 6th brief immediately following Tim Walz's disastrous debate performance and 33 days before the most important election in the history of our country is another obvious attempt by the Harris-Biden regime to undermine and weaponize American democracy and interfere with the 2024 presidential election. He goes on to talk about Jack Smith, calling him names, saying the hand-picked prosecutor of the Harris-Biden DOJ and Washington, D.C.-based radical left Democrats are hell-bent on continuing to weaponize the Justice Department in an attempt to cling to power.
First of all, Judge Chutkan is not part of the DOJ. She is part of the judiciary. And I think it's quite telling that Donald Trump isn't saying that the claims made in this new unsealed motion are false. He's not refuting them at all. He's saying that this shouldn't have been released no matter what, because this is election interference. That should be quite telling to everybody. And I think Jamie Raskin put it best when he said that, Trump brought this on himself. Let's go ahead and take a look at that.
Well, there are a lot of new details that are really eye-popping, but the Supreme Court and the Trump defense basically invited the submission of this document, because what the Roberts Court did to try to placate Trump was to say, well, the president is essentially immunized for official acts, or presumptively immunized for official acts, but not for private unofficial acts. And what this document does is to go through step by step by step through every chapter of this assault on American democracy to show how Donald Trump was not acting in an official capacity to take care that the laws are faithfully executed, but rather acting like, at very best, a private candidate, and really like an outlaw, like a tyrant attacking the constitutional system. And at every
Jamie Raskin is exactly right. First of all, if Trump didn't try to overturn a free and fair election in 2020, he wouldn't be in this mess. And it was him who tried to argue that he was somehow immune from prosecution, and he argued that all the way up to the Supreme Court, further delaying these matters. And now that it has been remanded to the lower court, Judge Chutkan and Jack Smith are doing exactly what the Supreme Court asked them to do. They are establishing a factual record to prove Donald Trump was acting in a personal capacity. Now, unfortunately for us, Donald Trump will probably challenge this, and it will likely go right back in front of the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court will actually have to look at the facts of the case this time. Because remember before, they just set those aside. They didn't really want to consider the facts. They just said that they were doing high-minded constitutional thinking. But now with this new fact-finding and this new motion, I think they will be forced to look at these facts and consider them. And they will have to rule whether or not Donald Trump is immune for these matters. And hopefully they make the right decision. Because I think Jack Smith has done a good job at proving to them and the American people that Donald Trump was acting in a personal capacity and not as president. But I'll leave it there, guys. If you got anything out of this video, please do remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share it with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. Trying to make it to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and would very much appreciate your support. If you want to see my breakdown of the immunity ruling, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.